Okay, welcome back to day 296. Did I mention that someone called me Ben? And I'm like, what? And I didn't correct them because I didn't want to be, like, embarrass them. But my name isn't Ben. And I'm like, it's not the farthest off, but I'm like, are you confusing me with someone? Because I think it's far enough away that I'm like, no. Because I'm like, I guess, kinda. Do I look like a Ben? I mean, I say not the farthest off, but I mean it's not similar. It's not the same. So it's very funny to me that I'm like, Ben? Ben? So I'm like, oh, okay. Ben together. Thank you. Great gameplays. If you're like, hey, you seem better today. Yeah. A, I slept. B, I have coffee. C, should I be drinking it now? No. But oops. It is the sweetest coffee ever. Anyways, I was sitting here, leaning back in my chair, luckily, because if I was sitting up as straight as I am now, or even straighter, I was leaning back, and something fell to my shirt. I'm like, oh my god, what is it? Because I thought it was going to be alive and moving, and I was like, oh my god, and it wasn't small, so I'm like, is it going to be a spider again? Because the spiders have fallen from the ceiling onto me before. So I'm like, ooh, and I look, and it's just a dead, mummified moth. And I'm like, thanks. So I went and I changed my shirt because it was also dusty. And I'm like, I'm glad I had allergies today. But B, oh my god, why would you do that? That's kind of hashtag rude, okay? I am also in a very good mood because I watched the 2 new episodes of What We Do in the Shadows. Highly recommend. It is rated mature, but highly recommend. Because my sibling, she's like, I don't ship people normally. And we don't typically ship characters. It's just, I don't know, it's not really us. If they're just not doing it. I think I don't ship as more as if it's canon. I really do fall for that canon. Where if they're like queer baiting, it's a little odd. That happened a few times where like, is this the first time I ship someone, or are you just queer baiting? And then my brain is like, it's kind of like canon. You know what I'm saying? Where it's just like, what? So I don't know. And then I hate it because once your brain realizes it's queer baiting, you're like, but then it also is canon. You know? Anyways. So it's like your brain gets mixed signals because they're giving you mixed signals. But anyways, like the TV show. Anyway, so I highly recommend watching them. No spoilers. The 2 episodes. And so my sibling really likes one thing that's kind of going on. But they also were both, my siblings were super into Laszlo. And I'm like, he just changed his hair a little bit. And they're like, yeah, and we can tell, and it's working for him. I'm like, okay. So, that's very fun too. So I'm glad we got to watch it. It's sometimes hard to try to get all of our schedules to watch something, especially if it's like an hour long and there's 2 of them. So we did manage to get some time to watch both of them. And, yeah, it's very nice. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10. I wanted to see him. Like, was there anything inherently wrong? But I think the show calls out a lot of things very well. Yeah, yesterday though, I was so stressed out after doing this, and I, blah blah blah, other things, health things. I'm like, I'm just gonna call the 24-hour advice thing that I have through my insurance. And I did, and she goes, yeah, your different issues I had. They're like, that might be nerve damage, you really should come in. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then it's like, my wrist hurts, and she's like, you should definitely bring that up when you do a conversation between the nerve damage in your hand and other things, blah, blah, blah. You should definitely talk to them. But it's Labor Day weekend, so they're not open until Tuesday. And all the appointments they have, my personal doctor is off all week. So I'm like, okay, so I have to go to a different doctor. And then on top of it, they're only same day appointments. So I have to call back on Monday afternoon at like at a very particular time, as close to that time as possible, so I can get the next day appointments, or the same day appointments, the next 24-hour appointments. And because I am going to do a little visual call with them. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. It works out Tuesdays. I try not to have allergies, so it would work out. It worked out. But yeah, so I don't know. I'm all like, oh no. But I'm tired, man. I think that I'm crashing. But I also did some laundry, which I'm very, very glad about, because it's my brand new sweatshirt, which you're like, hey, isn't it still hot? It's like, yes, it is. It's cooling down, actually. And I can tell the sun is rising and setting late, or near, short. Two different words for two different things. It is, the days are getting shorter. The sun is rising later and setting earlier. But yeah, one time at work, we have to do notifications for things. So because of, they could only work, because it worked outdoors, it was construction, they could only physically start working. Even so, in summer, you can work as early as whenever the sound law is open, that you can make noises, which is pretty much you get to the job site when the sun's up. And the problem is, you can't do it in winter. The law is the same, but you can't physically start working that early because the sun isn't up. You can't work for this construction that we work on, which is buildings. And so it's like, you can't work. So I had to write a letter, like, to the people, to the workers, due to, or you will have to start coming in an hour later, because, and I'm like, the sun and the rotations and the earth and the things and the equator and you, and I'm just like, how do you, like, unless I'm describing science, how do you explain? Because, you know, I understand, like, hey, this week, because blank, because blank, you explain things. This saying you can't work when the sun isn't up, so you're going to be working an hour later. But I'm supposed to explain why. I'm like, I don't know how to explain why. So I went to my coworker, I'm like, I don't know how to explain why. And she's like, you're fine. And I'm just like, it's two sentences. One, if I don't put a period there, instead use a comma, like, whatever sentence I did, it was, like, literally just a sentence. I'm like, oh, no, don't know, man. And she's like, I'll translate it, because we had some workers that preferred, or, yeah, I would say preferred Spanish. They spoke English, but they preferred Spanish, and I'm like, understandable, you know? Especially if it's like something that they really need to understand, like other memos. But I'm just like, it's just the sun and then the earth, and then the days are shorter. The sun isn't up. You can't work if the sun ain't up. You can't see. But I couldn't write that. So I just kind of sat there just going, anyways. But yeah, yesterday after doing this, I was so stressed out. I felt really bad. I wanted to make an appointment. I couldn't make an appointment because they were closed. the nurse is like, yes, dear God, go in, or get an appointment. And so what happened is I'm stressed out, and it's so funny to me because I don't know if it happens to everyone, but one thing that's so real, not as drastic, but in GTA 5, I never played, but I saw someone play a little bit of it. When your stressed out meter is too low, when you're too stressed out, your vision goes ooh, and you can't, it gets all blurry and foggy. And I'm like, that's literally what was happening. I was stressed. And I'm like, yeah. And it's so funny because I'm like, okay, bye. And maybe it's because he doesn't. Okay, so I watched the end of my previous clip like 3 times to try to remember what I was going to say. It doesn't exist. My brain is now completely don't have what I was trying to say. The only thing I can think of is how I was really stressed, but I don't know what my lead up was. It was really weird, but I had called my dad for the first time in a year of him hearing my voice, and I was like, oh my God, I'm so stressed. And he actually was surprisingly understanding. Usually he just like, oh, don't be stressed, but this time it was a little better. He still didn't understand completely. I mentioned how I'm in a lot of pain because of allergies every day, and I can't do anything that I want to or need to do and stuff, and he's just like, oh, I couldn't imagine being cooped up with allergies. Being cooped up is so hard. Like, I'm cooped up at my place, and I'm like, I'm not cooped up, I'm in pain. I'm not, oh, I need to go out. I'm in pain. So, anyways, besides that, he, was pretty receptive of things, and he said to make sure to go to the doctor, and obviously I'm going to do that. But, I don't remember what else I was going to say. Did I tell you guys about the moth? The moth that fell? So anyways, I was wearing a different shirt. If I did, I oopsie doopsie. I'm going to say the same story twice in one video then. What happened is I was sitting here, and I was in a different shirt, and I was leaned back. A moth fell. I thought it was going to be a spider. It scattered on me. I thought it was going to be like, but it wasn't. It was a mummified moth. I had to knock it off my shirt, ran upstairs, changed my shirt because, oh God, it was very dusty and had cobweb on it. And now I changed my shirt, but if I didn't lean back in the chair, it would have landed in my hair. And I did not want that at all. And I hate it. Yeah. But, what else is there? What else? Like, it's a really hard thing for me to go to the doctor, for if it's dentist or if it was my primary care or anything. It's really hard for me to know when to voice a concern. I think that I know it might be tedious, but I think always over ask questions and under ask questions, or over talk about symptoms and under talk about symptoms. That's really easy to say, but I'm just really bad at it. It took me a month when I broke my tailbone to think, oh, dip, maybe I should actually have called the doctor, but then I just never did. Until months later when I went to my primary care, and they're like, and I'm like, yeah, I broke my tailbone. It's just one of those things where if it's not call an ambulance, sorry, United States call the ambulance level, because one time overseas where it was a universal healthcare system, they're like, yeah, when you have a cold or flu, and you call the ambulance. I'm like, a cold? You call the ambulance for a cold? You literally would be fined a lot of money in America if you called an ambulance on a cold. Because if you call 911, if you call like the hospitals or ambulance for something that isn't an emergency, you get fined. So we're like, no. I had a cold when I was overseas somewhere else. Low key, I was really terrified it was COVID for a long time until we were like, no, it definitely can't be. But I was like, kind of fit. But no, it wouldn't. It didn't, because my sibling also got tested. When she got tested, she got the same thing as me. In the January before it became a international pandemic. It at the beginning of 2020. Anyways, point was that we all got sick with the same thing, and it's really funny because we spent time together and nothing happened. But it was, I drank water, my sibling drank my water by accident, and I'm like, that's my cup. They're like, no. I'm like, yeah, dude, you're gonna get sick. And guess what? They got sick 2 days later. And then they shared them. My two siblings shared a water bottle because my other sibling didn't realize that the first sibling was getting sick, and we all got sick. But what happened was my sibling got tested for COVID and antibodies, and they were negative for both. But we got pretty sick. It was a very, very bad flu, I guess. But it just like, even then, you don't call the ambulance. The hell? What do you mean? I literally could break a bone. Well, I did. Could break my arm. I still wouldn't call the ambulance. I'd be like, okay, guys, let's get in the car. It's just like, that's just how it is in America, and it fucking sucks. It's a fun fact. If you want to know what's up with America, that's it. My friend fainted, and she's like, made sure people like, don't send ambulance. Luckily she came to before they actually did, because she's like, I can't spend the 3,000 or whatever for an ambulance. I can't. And it's sad because right now when I said that, I'm like, 3,000 isn't the worst. It shouldn't have to be anything. I shouldn't have to pay to stay alive, period. I shouldn't have to pay for my life to be livable. Not just to stay alive, but I mean livable as in hearing aids, or canes, or crutches, or walkers, or medicine, or braces, or anything that improves or affects like your life and how you live it. You should not have to pay for any of that. And the fact that people disagree with that is so mind-boggling, where at least some people I know, they're like, well, if your minimum wage was higher, if they just made that amount of money. And I'm like, I personally still don't agree with that, because it's such a weird thing, because like I mentioned, I can make more money than my cousin, but he is able-bodied completely, and I'm me. So it's like, okay, so I have different ailments than somebody else, so I'm getting hundreds of dollars. I had to get a brain, or a CT scan. My cousin needed to get a CT scan. My sister had to get a CT scan. My other family members don't need CT scans. Why do we have to pay for something when other people don't have it? You know? And it's just like, because it isn't. And you're like, oh, well, who's going to pay? The government? Well, maybe we should rethink society also. And also, yes, the government has the money. Yes. And then people are like, well, if you just don't get taxed, then you have the money. to do it. No, I don't. No. Anyways, oof, that's a whole conversation that I'm not for right now.